guys, what is up? Welcome into the Guilty as Charged podcast. I'm your host, Steven. Joining me today, as always, are Alex and Tyler. Alex, we'll start with you, man. How you doing?
Doing pretty good. Austin Eckler gave us a little signal boost in an interview I never thought would happen. So that was fun. But yeah, no, good as always.
Yeah, I have to laugh though because he told us he's like, I'm not a rah-rah guy, and then he went to SoFi Stadium literally the next day, and it was like, let's go, like super rah-rah, which was I had to laugh at that. It was funny. Tyler, you got to go see SoFi Stadium yesterday, man. So how you doing today, and what was that experience like?
First of all, thanks a lot for the invite to the interview. As far as the stadium goes, that's fine. It was everything it's advertised to be. You know, I'm fortunate to have season tickets at my third stadium with my dad now. And, you know, before we were just able to go tour the store and a little bit of the outside, but being able to walk up to the railing and then down to our seats, it's something else. It's really it's like looking at the Colosseum in Rome. You know, it's something out of a painting, and the enormity of it is unfathomable. When I'm sitting at my seat and looking up at the ceiling, it's crazy how big this thing is. So, you know, anyone who's hesitating to buy tickets or season tickets or whatever, get on it, because you're like the best venue in the country watching, you know, the greatest sport in America. So, you know, watching Herbert and Mahomes exchange 300-yard games for the next 10, 15 years, it's going to be pretty special.
It is. It's going to be a lot of fun for everyone involved. I'll get there one time. I'll do it once, just, you know, check it off the bucket list. But, you know, there are some of you who are, you know, living in the Bay Area, or, you know, I saw I think Drew Powder Blue Drew lives in Oregon and still has season tickets. Like that's a next level dedication that I frankly will never reach, but that's great for you guys. And I respect that a lot. So like we did release the video version of our interview with Austin Eckler. If you have not checked that out and you are watching us on YouTube, please go and do that. I also did an interview with Joe De Leon, who covers the FCS and the Giants for Believe, the Believe Network. And so the audio version of those interviews is going to happen right after this. And then, as always, the videos are going to be separate. So please go check out that interview with Joe De Leon. Talked about Spencer Brown. We talked about Robert Rochelle. And we also talked about what kind of is going on with the Giants. Obviously, they pick ahead of the Chargers. So a lot of great information there. All right, guys, so go check those out, and then we will be right back. All right, so the first thing that we wanted to talk about today is the press conference that Tom Telesco gave on Friday. So that was happening right when Alex and I were interviewing Austin Eckler, so we didn't get to watch it live, but we have since watched it. So, Alex, what was kind of some of your main takeaways from listening to what Tom Telesco had to say on Friday?
I mean, Tom Telesco said a bunch of times that it's not GM speak, but it totally was GM speak, at least for most of it. Yeah. The one intriguing quote that stood out to me was when he said we evaluate safeties a little bit differently with Brandon Staley than we did with Anthony Lynn. And so that just kind of points to versatility, which he was asked about 15 times. And, you know, some of the other things that go into safeties that they're looking for in the draft. So I thought that was interesting. Other than that, it was like, yeah, we take players, not positions. And like, well, actually, if you look at your last like 9 drafts, that's not what you do. But anyway, go off. You know, it was an interesting press conference, but not really. It wasn't an interesting press conference at all. It was just Tom Telesco going through the motions, and I can't blame him because, you know, no offense to any of the reporters, but some of the questions he got were like, you know, how do you value these guys on your big board? And he's not going to tell you how he ranks Penei Sewell or Rashawn Slater, because then he's giving the league that information. So, like, I don't know, ask better questions, please.
The safety comment in particular, it is a little different, right? Because with Gus Bradley's scheme, like you have a free safety who has to have very specific traits. Like you're not going to stick Alohi Gilman at free safety because he doesn't have those kind of traits. However, in this new kind of scheme, that maybe there is a place for someone like Alohi Gilman who can maybe play in the box a little more, maybe play in the nickel. So that part was like, okay, like that makes a lot of sense. That can tell us some things. You know, they're not necessarily going to have to pigeonhole themselves into, well, this player is exclusively a free safety. This player is exclusively a strong safety. So I guess that does kind of make sense. Tyler, you've since listened to the press conference as well. What was your main takeaway or two from it?
The only other thing I really took away from it was that when asked about trading back, Telesco said that they would start feeling a little bit uncomfortable in the 20s to 30s range because you start running out of guys with first round grades. You know, traditionally it's between like, 20 and 25 or something like that, 15 to 25. And I think Steven and I have between 15 and 25. Not that anybody cares, but for NFL teams, that's kind of where they hover. So I think Tillery, I don't know about Verrett, but I think Tillery was like their last or one of their last guys with a first round grade. So I don't think they're going to want to trade that far back. So if they trade back at all, it'll probably stick in the teens, which makes sense anyway.
Yeah, so Bucky Brooks was kind of talking about this recently. I know a lot of people don't like Bucky Brooks, but he was saying that like, when we're grading as scouts, we as in them, not we as in the three of us, they kind of reserve like first round grade for like truly elite prospects. And some people are a little more lenient on that. Some people are really strict on like, these are the 15 players I think are elite. And so, right now I personally have 18. I think, Tyler has 20 and Alex has 21. So generally speaking, that's kind of what you see from NFL teams. And Dan Jeremiah has also talked about it. Like generally speaking, you have like 20 to 25 first round grades. So at 13, they should be able to get a good player kind of regardless of position. Like he said, like we're not going to pigeonhole ourselves into forcing a pick. And to an extent, I do agree, right? Like you don't want to reach if you feel like you're taking the 25th player at 13 off your board, then like, yeah, absolutely. But I keep on having this conversation with people. I'm fairly confident that whoever they have as the third rated offensive tackle or third rated corner or whatever is probably in like the 15, 16, 17 range. So like you might think it's a reach, but the Chargers are not going to reach. Tom Telesco is not going to take someone who he has 27th on his board at 13. It's just not going to happen.
I'm fairly confident that some of y'all don't understand what a reach is, because some of y'all were telling me on Twitter, Christian Darrisaw is a reach. I'm like, Christian Darrisaw is like the 15th to 17th player on most of these boards, and the Chargers pick at 13. The definition of reach is if he's not going to be there in the next round, then, he could be a player for that pick. And I don't think that means Tom Telesco is going to reach for a guy, in the 30s, like Steven said. But it means, so anyone between that 10 to 20 range is probably in play. So I just think we need to like recategorize what a reach is, because I think all these guys that we're talking about, like Darrisaw and Horn and Surtain, or if they trade up for Sewell, or if they go with Elijah or Tucker, like none of those guys are reaches like at all to me.
Yeah, well, I mean, like none of us really know what's going to happen, right? I think at this point, though, the one thing that we know for Tom Telesco is that everything is on the table. A trade up is on the table. He said that he prefers to trade down. He's never traded down. He's traded up like 4 or 5 times. So
yeah,
that's kind of bullshit, Tom.
That's a lie.
Yeah. So I think everything is on the table. And Tyler kind of pointed this out. Like there might be a scenario where, we're looking at, JC Horn's off the board, Surtain's off the board, Slater and Sewell are off the board, and maybe Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah is the pick. Like maybe he is the next best player. Maybe Azeez Ojulari is the next best player. Maybe Jalen Phillips is the next best player on their board. So I tend to think that in that kind of situation, they would take the offensive tackle. But I think at this point, like everything is on the table for the Chargers. And as much as I want an offensive tackle, frankly, this team just needs more blue chip players. And so I'm not going to be like crazy mad if they don't take an offensive tackle. Like I will be very annoyed, but as long as it's a blue chip player, like I think that really is where the state of the roster is. They just need more talent. And if it's not an offensive tackle, then so be it at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing I want to add is I just wanted to answer this question for myself. Is Darrisaw a reach? I never really thought so, but I compiled where he was ranked on 16 different big boards, then added our 3 big boards, and his average ranking was 16.9. So whether you feel that it's 16 or you feel that's 17, whatever, that's not a reach. Like he's the 16.9th ranked player on these boards out of 19, almost 20 boards. And I think like that's not a reach.
Yeah, I feel like I have been, like lower on him than most, but he's my 20th ranked player. Like it's not like I have him in the 40s. Like, people have like, why don't you like Darrisaw? I have certain issues with like not his effort. I think that, like I said, is frankly, it's a bullshit narrative. But I just want to see him be a little more urgent, have a little more efficiency with his movements as a pass blocker and as a run blocker. And so like there are certain things that he can fix, it's not a no-brainer pick, but neither is Samuel Cosmi. And like people are like, "What do you have Samuel Cosmi ahead of him?" They're separated by like 0.5 points, so it's not like I'm saying like
right.
Cosmi is this amazing player and Darrisaw's not. Like they're literally like
Mm-hmm.
super close to each other,
Right.
in my opinion, at least. So
Sure.
the other thing that happened on Saturday at SoFi Stadium, Justin Herbert was asked about Penei Sewell, his former teammate at the University of Oregon. And Justin Herbert was very upfront about it and said that he is doing his best to lobby for the Chargers to draft him. Obviously, if the Chargers want to draft him, they will have to trade up to get him. There is no circumstance that I think he is available at 13. But I think it is important to point out that Justin Herbert is, trying to, get them to take his former teammate, and specifically a teammate that happens to be an offensive tackle.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting. I think it'll be dictated by, what the cost of moving up to 7 is, which, I talked about a lot on Twitter. I think the most important thing is what happens with the quarterbacks exactly, because I think, we know the first 3 picks are going to be quarterbacks, but which ones of those are left with Fields, Lance, and Jones after those first 4 picks, I think will be very important, because then that can either, make a team like New England more willing to trade up or less willing. And then, just talking about positional value, a team like New England is going to be much more willing to give up multiple future first rounders than a team like the Chargers are for an offensive tackle. So I think it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. But, some people were talking about like, oh, well, if it's Mac Jones there at 7, then, it won't be as competitive. And I'm like, people are talking about Mac Jones going at 3. Like, what are we talking about here? Like, Mac Jones, regardless of what you think about him as a passer, like he has the 2 most important letters in the sport, next to his name, QB. Like, that's going to artificially inflate his value regardless. And so teams will trade up for that. And so that's kind of where I think we are with the Sewell thing. Obviously, I'm kind of a for the right cost kind of guy, and Tyler is, let's just mortgage the franchise. But I think that it's a possibility at 7, depending on what plays out with the quarterbacks. But for me, I think the Sewell thing still has to be about the right cost.
Yeah, one thing about being Chinese is what you do when you try to offer somebody something, you send them in the low offer, and if it doesn't work out, it's okay. You just like, you know what? No problem. I'm not going to fight for it. So, one future first round pick, I think is a nice offer. Goes any higher, I'm out. I'm not mortgaging no futures here. I just don't want to give up like a lot, but I want to give up enough to go get him. This whole Sewell Herbert thing is a really cute story for when the Chargers.com gets to write about it. If they pick him, like, oh yeah, this is how it came about. I just don't think it's going to happen. Like, I think Sewell is a much better prospect than Lynn and company were a coaching staff, but Herbert wanted to keep that coaching staff and they're all gone. So I'm sure he's lobbying. Yeah. Like, which tackle do you like? The guy I played with, I'm lobbying for him and I hope he does well. But like, if Herbert has this much sway, I'd be very shocked. So if they trade up, great. I just don't think it was like because Herbert was like, yeah, go get me that guy. I won rookie of the year. Woohoo.
Yeah, I guess in like a vacuum, you can maybe like see where they could, Arjun kind of put this out on Twitter where they give up this year's second and next year's second. And then obviously you swap picks this year. I guess like there's a world where that is kind of possible. And if that's what it takes, then, I'm not 100% for it, but I would understand it. I just think that, like Alex is saying, I think it's going to be a lot more expensive than people think. And if it takes next year's first and this year's second or next year's second or something like that, I'm kind of out. If you can get it for next year's first and like a 5th, then like, sure, I can understand that. But if you're asking me to give up, essentially 3 top 50 picks across the next 2 drafts, like I'm kind of not about that.
Yeah, people have asked me, but like, what if we could get Penei Sewell for this year's first, 5th, and a Klondike bar? It's like, okay, if you can do that, then do it. Flavor? Like, I'm all for it. Yeah. I haven't eaten a Klondike bar in a fucking long time. But it's that's just where I think it is. If you can get him for the right value, and like Arjun said, if you can trade 2 seconds, like sure, I would do it. But I just think it's not the wise thing to be kind of gambling those first round picks. And like Steven said, I do think it's going to be more expensive because I smell Bill Belichick's shitty draft dog from here. All right. I just feel like he's going to go up to 7 and do something. Washington needs a quarterback. Chicago needs a quarterback. And ultimately, I don't think that Justin Herbert is going to be a big, sticking point in this, and that he wants Penei Sewell. That's as dumb as like Burrow wants Chase stuff, and he's trying to push the Bengals to do it. The Bengals are either going to take Chase or they're not. Like, I don't think it's going to be based on the QB who's been there for 1 year making a decision. Maybe like Brady in New England had that power, but not these guys.
Yeah, not a rookie, and especially not Burrow. Like Burrow played 11 games or whatever. So it's going to be an interesting thing to happen, or interesting to keep an eye on rather. There are some people who are like, I expect them to do it. I like, it wouldn't shock me, but I'm not there. Like, I think Tom Telesco is not going to go to this table ready to trade next year's first round. Like, that's just not who he is. Like, he has traded up, but he's never traded like a future first. Like, that's the biggest difference, right? When he traded up for Melvin Gordon, it was like he traded up 2 spots, and then he also threw in like a 4th round pick or something like that. Like, so he's not going to trade a future first ever. Like, he holds on to that future first round pick like it's his baby blanket from when he was a child.
Well, I do think it was interesting. He actually had a quote in his press conference that was something along the lines of, when a GM calls you, that's when you lose the leverage in the trade, right? Versus when you call someone else, then you have the power, or something like that. So yeah. I think he would sort of have to be the aggressor in the Lions trade for that to happen. I think if the Lions call him and are like, hey, New England wants to offer blah, 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 blah. Like, I don't think he's going to be the one to match that. But if it's a little bit lower than Detroit expects, then I think he could jump in for sure.
Yeah. And Detroit, like, frankly, like, they need blue chip players more than anyone. Yeah. Like, their roster outside of Jeff Okudah, and I don't even know their roster that well anymore because everybody's gone, but they don't have like hardly any blue chip players. So if they stuck at 7, I would not be surprised. But that is the spot to get to if you want to trade up to get to Penei Sewell, because the Panthers are 100% not passing on Penei Sewell if he's on the board. All right, so we're going to get to our mock draft now. This is our 3.0. We are going to try to be at least a little somewhat predictive. I think last year the only pick we got right was Justin Herbert, but then Tom Telesco had to trade his 2nd and his 3rd round pick too. So we're going to try and put on our Telesco hats for a day, and we'll see how this goes. So I'm going to have the first pick. We have preloaded the draft, so we don't have to. I wanted to make sure that it wasn't a crazy board. So this is how the draft panned out so far. Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson, Justin Fields, Trey Lance. So this is the first thing that has to happen, right? If you want to go get Penei Sewell, 4 quarterbacks have to go off the board, in my opinion. And then obviously the Bengals have to take one of the receivers or Kyle Pitts. Alex is going to be very happy about this draft because the Eagles got Kyle Pitts for some reason. That is like the one pick where I'm like, yeah. But JC Horn and Patrick Surtain both off the board. Mac Jones off the board. Rashawn Slater off the board. So in terms of like worst case scenario at this point, I think this is it, right? Because ideally, in my opinion, I think you have Rashawn Slater, you have JC Horn, Patrick Surtain. I think those players are on a different tier than the players that are currently on the board. So you have Micah Parsons, who's a piece of shit, Devontae Smith, Christian Darrisaw, Caleb Farley, Tevin Jenkins, Jalen Phillips, Zaven Collins. That's kind of the board right now. For me personally, I would take Tevin Jenkins in this kind of situation and put him at left tackle. I do think Tevin Jenkins is a better prospect than Christian Darrisaw, but I think in this kind of situation, you'd be looking at Devontae Smith potentially or Christian Darrisaw. I think that would be the debate. And so I personally would take Christian Darrisaw if that is the case. And I think that is what Tom Telesco would do as well. I think if Jalen Waddle were on the board instead of Devontae Smith, I think that's a different conversation. But I think if this is the board, then we can all pencil in Christian Darrisaw. And I think that's fine. Like, he's not my guy, but I understand the pick. He's got a ton of physical attributes that do align with what the Chargers are looking for at left tackle. The dude is a crazy athlete that can run step for step with Khalil Herbert down the field. So there is a lot of upside here for Christian Darrisaw. The Chargers are not settling for him. He's just not my player. He's not the guy that I would take, but I would be very happy with Christian Darrisaw in this case.
Yeah, I think it'll be just interesting to see when we talk about those kind of best case, worst case scenarios, because I did a mock draft video this weekend sort of talking about the top 12. And one of the things that I saw is that in some simulations on the Draft Network, you get all 5 quarterbacks, which I still think is the most likely thing to happen in the top 10. But in some of them, you get 3, and some of them you get 4, right? So those position players start to whittle down, and maybe a Micah Parsons is in that top 10, maybe a Devonta Smith is in that top 12, right? So I think that's kind of the, debate between the best and worst case scenarios, I guess. I would go with Christian Darrisaw here. I'm in agreement with Telesco. I know Steven would go with Tevin Jenkins. But for me, I think Darrisaw is kind of the best tackle prospect on the board. And Devonta Smith, while I think he is kind of BPA here in this scenario, I just think Darrisaw fills a much bigger need. I know Telesco said players, not positions. I don't believe him on that for one second. But, with, Surtain and Horn kind of off the board here, I think that the area of need and sort of, to an extent, the second BPA, I think that makes a lot of sense with Christian Darrisaw.
I think we've basically beaten the Christian Darrisaw story to death. We've all talked about him many times. So I just want to know why you didn't think the Chargers would take Tevin Jenkins. Is it because he's a right tackle? Because he's a little bit older at 23? And you think they're just close enough where that matters? So why do you think the Chargers would not take Jenkins?
Well, I think, first and foremost, I think the Chargers know that they have to get a left tackle. I know that Tom Telesco, again, the positions, players, not positions, but I think there is a world in which some teams, and this could be the Chargers, look at Tevin Jenkins, and he's not he's not a scrub. He is athletic, but I think you look at the length and athleticism of Christian Darrisaw, and that aligns more with what the prototypical left tackle is. I do think that Tevin Jenkins could play left tackle, absolutely. We've had this conversation a little bit with Brentley Weissman. He happens to share that same kind of belief. It would just be different, right? Because Tevin Jenkins is more of an aggressive, I want to go get my hands on you as soon as I can offensive tackle. And that works for some offensive linemen. David Bakhtiari is that way. He loves to quick set. He loves to angle set. But traditionally speaking, you've got to have a left tackle who can have the strength, the athleticism to do more traditional deep sets and then be able to handle speed, handle power. And that is definitely more of Christian Darrisaw. I know Tom Telesco said he doesn't length isn't in his top 3 traits when evaluating offensive tackles. But again, the proof says otherwise, right? Because if length wasn't that big of a deal, he would have made Forrest Lamp a tackle. And I know it wasn't 100% his decision, but when we're thinking of how the Chargers value length, Forrest Lamp is the poster child, right? Because if they didn't value it that much, he would have been a tackle, but he had 32 and 7/8 arms. I think it was the case for him. Now, Tevin Jenkins is past the 33, but I mean, there's no doubt about it that Christian Darrisaw checks every box physically of what teams traditionally look for in the left tackle spot.
Yeah, absolutely agree.
So we'll go to Darrisaw, and then next up is Tyler at 47. So there's Tevin Jenkins at 14 and Smith right off the bat. So I kind of wonder too, though. Kind of
hints to the.
Go ahead, Tyler.
Go for it. Oh, I was just saying that kind of hints to the Vikings taking Tevin Jenkins. If the Chargers traded back to 16 or 17, they're taking Darrisaw or Jenkins or whatever. So you got to take your guy at 13.
100%. I do also kind of wonder if Caleb Farley is in play, right? Because we know that Tom Telesco isn't. He hasn't shied away from medical red flags as much as other people might think. So I kind of wonder if Farley is in play still for the Chargers at 13.
Nick Bolton
he could be.
All right. So after Christian Darrisaw, like Tyler said, you have Tevin Jenkins, Devonta Smith, all these guys. Alex Leatherwood at 21. Honestly, that wouldn't really surprise me at this point. Elijah Vera Tucker at 24. That's really good value for him. I don't think the Steelers are smart enough to do that. Oh, this is updated with the Ravens trade, huh? So they get Tryon and Merrick in this situation. That's very Ravens-esque, and that would be two great picks. There's Cosme at 33. Damon Davis, Terrace Marshall, Liam Eichenberg. Is Radune's gone yet? I think Radune's is still on the board.
If the Eagles got Kyle Pitts and Terrace Marshall, I would throw a parade.
So Dylan Radune's is on the board still here. So for those who think that the Chargers don't have to take an offensive tackle at 13, he's kind of like the best case scenario at 47, if that is the case.
He's fallen a little bit on the Draft Network because he was, I want to say like 41-ish before. So now he's 54. So I just thought that was interesting.
All right, Tyler. So let me know what positions you want to see, how far you want me to go down.
Just scroll down slowly and I'll look at the guys. Javonte Williams is fun, but no. Turner. You've definitely set me up for some sort of defensive player. And I feel like it's a little easy at this point. I'm not going to talk about Rousseau since I just don't think he'll actually be there. So like if he were there, I suppose that they would take him. I just don't think he's falling to 47. So I'm just not really going to. Okay. I am actually it's probably put a lot of strain on Alex and the rest of us in this draft. I'm not taking Javonte Williams, but I am going to take the way TDN's board is, at least. I do think it doesn't quite, he's not ranked 47th or anywhere slightly near there. But I do kind of get what you were talking about, Steven, where you could find corners a little bit later and that a safety is somewhat more of a priority at this point. While it is the boring pick because we pick this guy a lot and most people have him picked at this spot a lot, I'm actually going to go Richie Grant, and that's over Asante Samuel Jr. I'm going to trust that my co-hosts can find me a corner later on, or that we can coach up Brandon Faison to be really good or something.
Oh, man.
But so I'm actually going to go. Otherwise, I would go like Landon Dickerson just because I think that would be really fun. Like if you're just
so
going
much fun.
I kind of just want to go all offensive line, but I think once you nail your left tackle, you just get your best defensive player available. And Richie Grant is my 23rd ranked player. So even though he's here at 71, and granted, I haven't graded all the players on TDN's boards, maybe he would be lower, but he's my 23rd ranked player. And yeah, he's 71 here, whatever. I'm going to go with him because I do think he is basically the best defensive player available. And I think I have him over Asante Samuel Jr. anyway. So at this point, I want a defensive player. I'm going Richie Grant.
Alex, you're up next, man. So what are your thoughts here about Richie Grant at 47?
I would not take him over Asante Samuel Jr. I think I have Richie Grant in like the 40s or so. I like him, but to me, I just kind of value having that cornerback more. And if you want to scroll up, Steven, I just want to see who else was kind of available. Yeah, I mean, you can make the argument for potentially double dipping a tackle. Gregory Rousseau, I know Peyton Turner, edge. I don't know. For me, I do appreciate Richie Grant, but he's probably like the third or fourth guy I would have picked here. But that's just kind of me. But different tastes. And I do still think you can have a successful draft even with a safety in the second round. I think there are good cornerbacks that are going to be available in the third round. But for me, I don't know. I know you guys value the safety in the second round thing, especially Steven, but to me, I just think corner would fix quite a few problems. I do think they will draft a safety earlier than expected, but I don't know if I'm feeling it in the second round personally.
Well, it's not just like specifically the position. It's more so the depth of the position, right? Because I think that I think there are a lot more corners in this class than there are safeties that I would be okay with. And it's, Richie Grant is technically not like a starter in the base formation, right? But if they draft Richie Grant here, he's going to play 65-70% of the snaps. And so he pretty much is a starter to play on special teams as well. I'm a big fan of this pick. I will say it would not surprise me if they do take an edge rusher at this spot. There's a, Peyton Turner, Ronnie Perkins. I know Rousseau's on the board. And Joseph Osai. I think if this is the way the board pans out, I think they could absolutely take a edge rusher here. but I love Richie Grant, so I'm not going to be mad about that pick.
Dylan Arjun's at 48 to the Raiders, huh?
Loathe that. Creed Humphrey to the
Seahawks.
Creed Humphrey to the Rams. I know some people are going to be very happy about that happening if that's the case.
Mm-hmm.
Wyatt Davis to the Chiefs. Fuck. That would be great for them.
That would be awesome for them, unfortunately.
God, they're rebuilding that whole offensive line, aren't they?
Yes. All right. So Spencer Brown's off the board. Elijah Molden, Divine Diablo. There's Rousseau at 69. Wow. De'Ami Brown. That is nice. There's a little bit of the run on receivers. Milton Williams at 64. Wow. There's the edge rushers. All right. So there's Landon Dickerson to the Cardinals. Man, that'd be really good for them. All right, Alex, let me know what you want to see.
Yeah, I mean, I guess just scroll down a little bit. Let's see what we got going on. I mean, this is an interesting position if you do go safety. I think this is really setting up for one or two things if they go Richie Grant in the second round. Probably edge, probably cornerback, I think, are the two that I kind of look at there. Or they could go interior offensive lineman. If I were to go BPA, I guess I would take a receiver here based on TDN's board. But I don't think they're going to take a receiver this early. And I don't love any of these receivers. So I'm just kind of, can you scroll down one more time? Yeah, I'm going to take Ifeatu Melifonwu here. I think that he's probably the best cornerback on the board. I know some people will argue for Tyson Campbell and the Georgia boys. But if you can get that kind of value here, again, 78th ranked player, 77th, pick here, he fills the corner need. I personally would have gone to Asante Samuel Jr. last round, but if the sort of, counter offer to that is that you get Richie Grant in the second and then Ifeatu in the third, I'm also fine with that. So I do think he is kind of best player available in this spot. So that's where I'm going.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a good call. And I think honestly, like if it's me, I wouldn't have been opposed to taking Melifonwu or Paulson Adebo at 47. I know that's a little rich for some people, but I mean, I have both of them within my top 50. So I think at 47, I think they're in play there. And obviously right here, I think that's a no-brainer here as well. I guess I could see them maybe taking a receiver with this pick. Maybe given the circumstances with Mike Williams and obviously Tyron Johnson and Jalen Guyton are also free agents after next year. But if this is the way the board pans out, it has to be a cornerback, and even Tyson Campbell, I think, would be in play. Benjamin St. Juste, I saw him a little bit down the road, right here at 97. So I think if this is the way the board pans out, then we would see, a cornerback taken.
Yeah, I mean, and I think a lot of people talk about Trill Williams and you have Cisco at Syracuse, but I think Melifonwu was the most impressive of those three players in the secondary. So I think you get a guy who can be a day one starter, and anytime you can get that in the third round, especially at a position of need, I just think it's something that you have to do.
See, it worked out.
There we go. 100%. Kind of. But it is true. Like, I think, the cornerbacks in the third round that you could get aren't that much worse than Asante Samuel Jr. Like, I think they're pretty close on my board, in fact. So
I could see them going receiver if something like, for some reason, Rondale Moore fell, or maybe like Wallace or something.
I just saw a lot of those guys like Dwayne Eskridge and Nico Collins, and it's like I don't hate those players, but they're not that big of a value for me where I'm feeling like, okay, I got a guy that was supposed to go 30 picks before. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
So you did get a Georgia boy just for the Eagles in this situation.
Okay.
And there's your guy Hamza Nasruddin to the Dolphins at 81.
So the Bears select Davis Mills. That was in there.
Did they really? Oh man.
Yeah.
That Davis Mills was a tough evaluation for me because like clearly you look and he's got physical tools, but I think he only made 10 starts in college. So I don't know, man. If I were him, I would have gone back to school, maybe cement yourself as kind of like a top tier guy next year. But I obviously will not fault anyone for declaring for the draft. All right. So I'm up here at 97. James Hudson, man, it's so unfortunate the way that that guy tested. I was such a big fan of his tape.
Mm-hmm.
There's Tyler Shelvin. Oh, Deontay Brown. Can't wait to take him.
On the table.
Yeah, absolutely. So I kind of know where I'm leaning here.
Can I guess?
If it were me, obviously, I would take an interior offensive lineman. We all know that. However, Brandon Staley and Tom Telesco have talked several times about not having, you can never have too many edge rushers. And so I think for some people, this might be a little rich. But I think if he had a 2020 season, I think we'd be looking at arguably a second round pick, and that's Ellerson Smith from Northern Iowa. He fits the physical profile of what Brandon Staley has traditionally looked for as an outside linebacker edge, almost to a T. Like every single attribute that he wants, Ellerson Smith has. You know, we've kind of talked about him. I think he was Alex's sleeper. I don't think he's much of a sleeper anymore. I think people have really caught on, and the hype train has kind of taken off. But if he's here at 97, I'm taking him. And so Ellerson Smith is going to be my pick. I know everybody was kind of expecting an offensive heavy draft, but I really like the way that this is panning out. Get your left tackle of the future, get your CB1 of the future, get an edge rusher, get a safety. You give Brandon Staley 3 defensive horses that can really be building blocks for this team going forward. So Ellerson Smith, the edge rusher out of Northern Iowa, is my pick here.
Just out of curiosity, because they have Jordan Smith here, were there any other edges available? I just wanted to see if there was anybody else. We have him Carver Shed, which is interesting. Patrick Jones would probably
Dio Odeyingbo from Vanderbilt would be way more interesting to me if he hadn't torn his Achilles last year. So I tweeted this out. He has like an 87-inch wingspan. Like his length is absurd. But again, he just tore his Achilles. So I'm a little worried about how that will affect his explosiveness going forward in his career, unfortunately.
Yeah, so I mean, I think looking at the board, Ellerson Smith is clearly best edge available. You can make an argument for best player, but because of how we've kind of gone through the draft so far, I do think he is kind of BPA here, and I would take him with the edge.
Tyler, any thoughts? Haven't watched him. Okay.
I totally get why they would go edge here. They need more edge rushers. The Chargers have been best when they have at least 3 different guys to rotate one guy in, and Nwosu is possibly gone next year. So this totally makes sense to me.
Cool. All right. So Tyler
and their defensive line coach and their defensive coordinator are amazing.
They are.
Or their head coach, but their real D coordinator.
Their real D coordinator, yeah. But that's also kind of why I think Peyton Turner is in play, right? Because I think just the value of Peyton Turner at 47, rather. I just think the value of edge rusher is so important in this. He again is someone that fits the Chargers, almost perfectly in terms of physical profile.
Yep.
It's just a matter of if they think he is that best player available there.
Yeah.
So here's a little run on offensive linemen: Kendrick Green, Robert Hainsey, Aaron Banks, Deontay Brown, Ben Cleveland, all came off the board. Deontay Smith, James Hudson, Stone Forsythe as well. All right, Tyler, here you are at pick 118.
Nice. Go ahead and scroll down for me. I'm not taking Sermon. I don't want to say it's redundant, but there's some redundancy in positions here.
Yeah.
There's like 2 offensive skill position players, or even offensive linemen.
If we had gone Richie Grant round 2, I think Talnawa Hafanga, he would be an interesting pick here. I like him a lot.
Yeah. Okay, scroll back up because I already forgot the name. They were that good.
Man, Patrick Jones is really fallen.
Yeah, I know. I still don't get that. I don't buy it, but we'll see where he goes. I'm going to pick one of the interior defensive linemen here. Oh man, it's like I don't know how I pick between these 2 guys. Okay. Yeah, because there's not a lot on this board. Like, I think they would go something random. Like, I truly think they would go somewhere like maybe like receiver. But on this board, it's not really like there's nothing really like. I mean, Des Fitzpatrick, maybe. Like that's tempting. Like, I just feel like you guys like the. Okay, what I would think, I think at this point is they would go, like give me some offense, but that doesn't really match like their board and like.
Well, it's going to be really interesting to see how they value KJ Hill and Joe Reed, right? Because I think it's clear that they like Tyron Johnson and Jalen Guyton, but you know there are still a lot of people that seem to like KJ Hill and think that he could develop into something as a route runner and as a slot guy, and obviously Joe Reed is kind of that gadget guy. So it's going to be interesting to see if that influences their board at all, because I agree. Like it wouldn't surprise me if this is where they take, another wide receiver, give Justin Herbert another weapon, maybe double down onto the offensive line. But yeah, I would have a hard time passing on Shelvin or McNeil in this kind of situation.
Yeah, I think not only did they have more picks this draft, but Telesco hinted at them having, 3 or 4 extra picks in the next draft as well. And if you're looking for another wide receiver 3, granted, you maybe don't want to burn only a 6th round pick on a guy, but you have a lot of at bats to go kind of find that later ish day 3 wide receiver 3. Maybe they want more investment in the wide receiver position. I don't know. But they have so many at bats next season as well. Like they could see how the Johnson Guyton experiment plays out. And then of course, Hill and Reed, then address it next year. So I'm going to punt. Alex, what were you going to say?
No, I was just going to say, if they could say, hey, we don't like any of these guys on the board, they trade back from round 4 till, the end of round 4, right? Or something. If there's a player that they like better, Telesco said he likes accumulating a picks. Maybe he gets a pick later in this draft, or maybe a 5th or 6th round pick next year,
Yeah, definitely. I am sick of watching the Chargers give up. I mean, they're bend not break kind of defense, but I just feel like even when they get to the goal line, I have flashbacks to like when they played the Saints back in San Diego, where was it Kuhn? I forget who the fullback was, took like a handoff and ran right up the middle for a touchdown. And I just hate watching that. I want a plugger of the line. I am going to go with Tyler Shelvin. He is the greatest first name of any prospect on this board. And I don't think it's a huge difference between Shelvin and McNeil. McNeil's a bit of a pass rusher, but I love what Shelvin does. And I think they would go here. It does make sense for what they kind of need. And they're going to prepare for life without Joseph. And who knows what the rest of their interior defensive linemen are going to do. They probably would go McNeil, but I think there's just something about Shelvin that would be alluring to the Chargers, whether it be the heart he shows on the field or the effort or whatever it is. I think at this point that Shelvin would potentially be the pick, if not like a wide receiver. But based on, I'm taking Shelvin there.
There we go. I think that's a fine pick. And, in the 4th round, I think that's okay. I think, the run stuffing defensive tackle has kind of become like a dying breed, but you still need them, right? And especially, Brandon Staley likes to be able to mix up coverages, mix up blitzes, and do all these things. Well, you still got to stop the run. Like that still needs to be a priority. And as much as I think Linval Joseph is going to have a good season again, he is getting older. Justin Jones is less of a nose tackle, more of like a 3 technique defensive tackle. Same with Jerry Tillery. So they do need someone to be that run stuffing guy. I know Braden Fajoko, he's very popular on Twitter. I just don't know if we've seen enough of that. I don't know if he fits the profile of that, but Tyler Shelvin absolutely is a nose tackle, going to stuff the run, going to stop blockers in his tracks and set the line of scrimmage. And that's so valuable for a guy like Kenneth Murray, Drew Tranquill, because they don't have to worry about double teams, blockers coming up to them, because Tyler Shelvin's going to eat all of those blockers up at the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, and I mean, last mock draft, we sort of took a bunch of positions and we forgot interior defensive linemen. So we addressed it in this one.
I'm sure we'll be reminded of what we forgot this time.
Oh yeah.
There's Des Fitzpatrick to the Colts. I love Des Fitzpatrick. I think Fitzpatrick is one of the most slept on guys in this class. I really do. Him and Cameron Bynum are like my 2 like sleeper guys that I love more than anyone else.
You do like Bynum more than anybody else.
That is true.
That is true.
That is very true. That is very true. All right, so Alex is going to come up here at pick 159. Patrick Jones is still on the board. Wow. There he goes. All right, here you go. So it looks like you're taking an edge rusher again. No, I'm just kidding.
All right, let's scroll down, see what we got.
Oh,
Daz
I know where this
Newsome
is
from
going.
Daz Newsome. All right. I do want to see what else we have though. Braden James, interesting.
I like Brendan Hymes a lot.
A lot of people like Simi Fihoko. I'm not as high on him, but he could be kind of interesting. Maybe as like a 6th or 7th round guy, kind of jump ball like Williams replacement. Maybe some people value him like that, but I'm not quite as high on him. All right, you know what I want to do. Open the wide receiver tab. All right.
Who is he going to take? I wonder who.
Daz Newsome. Well, all right. Daz Newsome is actually pretty interesting. I'm gonna take Anthony Schwartz here, and you guys know that. But I do think a lot can be said for Daz Newsome and the North Carolina kind of receivers in general. Obviously, you have De'Ami Brown, who's a little bit outside my top 50, but still very good. So honestly, I do think this is kind of a position where we've addressed everything else, and you're kind of looking for an offensive weapon. And the board kind of bared that out, with a lot of the guys that are going to be available here. So, yeah, you know what I'm doing. Click the button, Steven.
No, I totally understand that. And I think Anthony Schwartz, we've said for years that the Chargers need more speed. They need more natural athleticism on the outside. And Schwartz is absolutely that. Like, he brings that track record literally to the table. And I think he'd be a fine pick. I just kind of wonder if, the Chargers are looking more for kind of like that Mike Williams replacement than somebody to compete with Tyron Johnson and Jalen Guyton. And so that's just kind of my only holdup here. I have studied Simi Fehoko. I haven't slapped a grade on him yet, but I have watched the 3 games. And so I'm a big fan of his. He is 6'4". He did grow up in Utah. Unfortunately, went to a high school that I hate, but that's okay. But I think he's got the kind of physical profile that could, develop into that wide receiver on the outside if Mike Williams leaves. So that would be my only hang up there. Same with Josh Immature Bebe, or however you say that. I think he kind of has that same kind of physical profile too. And obviously I like Josh Palmer a lot as well, but this is Alex's pick. So we're going to go with Anthony Schwartz.
Yeah. Nice.
You know
it. And, I think for anyone who complains that maybe this is like, they have just way too many wide receivers. My video's gone. Anyway, for anyone who complains that they have way too many wide receivers, like Telesco had 5 tight ends last year, preparing for the eventual departure of Hunter Henry. So I think like they could add a guy and then, eventually bump off Mike Williams. And then now you have your replacements. It worked for him last year. The tight end room this year is kind of the guys they brought in last year. So, I think I could see them doing that again this year. And, the reason they cut Tevin Reese back in the day, even just after drafting him, is because he had horrible hands. And we have Guyton, who has horrible hands, and KJ Hill struggled with some drops early on during the season. So if either of these guys aren't really cutting it, I mean, you might have your replacement right here. So
yeah,
I like it.
I don't know. The thing for me is like, I think they're deep at receiver, but I don't think they're like super deep to the point of not taking someone. Like, if we saw a lot from Joe Reed last year as a receiver, then maybe that would get me to the point of being, let's not take a wide receiver this draft. But I see Steven circling camera behind him.
Yeah.
But I don't know. For me, Guyton does drop the ball quite frequently, and like he is fast, but not terribly efficient. So I don't know. I think you really have 4 kind of impact guys on this team that are wide receivers, and I don't know. Are you expecting Tyron Johnson to make a crazy jump? I certainly think he could. But to me, that doesn't prevent you from taking another wide receiver, especially like we talked about. Mike Williams, Jalen Guyton, and Tyron Johnson are all free agents next year, right? So,
yeah.
All right. So I would have loved to address the offensive line again sooner than this. Obviously, like everybody who knows where I stand will know that. This is kind of where I think the Chargers could, we saw them go with Alohi Gilman in this range, kind of that special teams target. So I wouldn't surprise me if they did that again here. Justin Hilliard would be my choice if that is the case here. He's kind of a guy, I think, Ben Fennell mentioned him as one of his favorite special teams guys. Had like 600 special team snaps at Ohio State. And he just kind of had a log jam in front of him, right? There's like 7 Ohio State linebackers in this class. So yeah, I think that could make some sense. But I do think eventually they need to bring in some competition for Ode Abushi. And so that's kind of where I'm leaning right here. And I'm going to shock the world, and I'm going to go with the BYU player, Tristan Hodge, the offensive lineman from BYU, who has some center guard flexibility. And even though he played at BYU, he also played at Notre Dame. So kind of checks a lot of boxes for the Chargers in this kind of situation. Tom Telesco inadvertently gets his Notre Dame player in Tristan Hodge.
Now, out of the 128 offensive linemen you graded, where does Tristan Hodge rank?
It's only 50, okay? Come on. But Tristan Hodge, I think this is a good spot for him. I would be okay taking him in the 5th round. But he has some, very what's the word I'm looking for? He has some good traits to look for as a developmental offensive lineman. This is kind of late to be taking like a competition for Ode Abushi, but I do think eventually they would have to address this. I did also think for a second about going with Dan Moore from Texas A&M as kind of that tackle guard target. I think he's got a little more developing to happen though. And so I think Tristan Hodge is a little more safe, could potentially actually give Ode like an actual competition. I don't think he would beat out Ode, but I do think that Tristan Hodge would make a lot of sense there.
I do think it's crazy when you go back to the tackles page that Alaric Jackson is like 237 compared to where we had him a few years ago. And Jason Ballier talked about that on Twitter, and I just thought that was super, interesting.
Yeah, he was because I really liked him, to an extent last year when I was watching Tristan Wirfs. It just he took a big step back this last year, and then he went down at the Senior Bowl and honestly looked like the slowest player on the field and just got dominated. So I think that's kind of why people are lower on him the most. Wow, Simi Fehoko is still on the board. All right, Tyler, you're up, man. 198.
So one of the things the Chargers have done before is value very athletic linebackers on day 3. We saw that with Drew Tranquil, and who tested very, very well athletically. I don't recall exactly where he was. And I do think it is worth it to them to try and get one more guy in there because you really don't know how this group is going to hold up. So I think Steven knows where I'm going, or potentially a very athletic linebacker. He's very blue collar and hardworking. See if Steven gets there slowly. Yeah, so I am actually going to go with Nick Niemann, who ranked 21st out of 2,098 linebackers from however they have that, how long they've had it for their RAS score. I just think, yeah, he's 266 on this board, but I think, listen, Telesco is not shy from taking guys that are a little further down than the board actually says they would be. So yeah, I think they need an athletic linebacker. I think they do take athletic linebackers on day 3. They do need special teams help. And I think Niemann kind of checks a lot of boxes for them. So I'm going to go with Niemann here.
Now, if you were to go for the real blue collar player, you would go with Patty Fisher, who ran slower than
Well, to your point, Tyler, like Alohi Gilman wasn't even on the Draft Network's board last year. And like, I literally was like, who is this guy?
Yeah. Oh yeah, we all.
But yeah, I think this is a fine pick at this point in the draft. You bet on some tools, get a special teams contributor. They lost BJ Bello, so they do need to kind of get that off-ball linebacker special teams guy. So I think that makes a lot of sense.
All right, white dude running a 4.45.
Yeah, from Iowa too.
From Iowa.
So Alex is going to be the last pick here. Maybe going a potential. We haven't taken a tight end yet. Granted, you can still get a blocking tight end at this point. Maybe double down on an edge rusher. We'll see. This is Alex's pick. I don't know where Alex is going to land on this one, but
Can I just say something before Alex picks?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Remember my really stupid Avery Williams pick that was in the 400s? He's at 188 right now.
Yeah.
So everyone
Ooh.
can.
Wow.
and he's on the board.
Just
And he's on the board. Should we get 2 special teams picks in a row, Alex?
Maybe, but show me that tight ends tab real quick.
yeah, show me the tight ends. Yeah.
Show me the tight ends.
Matt Bushman. Yeah.
Oh, 2 BYU players. Let's do it.
I'm going to go with Luke Farrell out of Ohio State. And I really like him as a blocker. I think this team needs a blocker. We talked about it. I've done this a couple times in my mock drafts, taking Luke Farrell at the end of the 7th. But I think he is a really good blocker, and I think this team needs it with Jared Cook, who's not really a blocker, and then you have a bunch of kind of unproven blockers. Steven Anderson's like okay, Donald Parham, I don't know. So like I think if you have Tom Telesco carry 4 tight ends in the next year, which is kind of what he did this year, and sort of the approach he's had with Anderson and Parham in terms of waiting for development, I think you could get a guy here that is a good blocker. So I'm going to take Luke Farrell. I think he's a good team player, good character guy, and I think he's a good 7th round pick.
Nice job, Alex. I like it. This means that you have like 4 really interesting or, at least solid either developmental guys or veteran guys, or 4 really interesting guys and Gabe Neighbors on your team. So you're doing a really good job.
And I mean, we pretty much kind of addressed all of the positions really in the draft. Yeah. The only thing that I think we didn't address is running back, which we did last time, which I don't think is a desperate need, even though I'll cry if we don't get Khalil Herbert, of course. But I think that we did pretty well in terms of the positions. I'm sure the comments will let us know that we forgot to draft Matt Borogalos or whatever, but
you didn't take a kicker. All right, so this is how the draft did end up. Christian Darrisaw, Richie Grant, Ifeatu Melifonwu, Ellerson Smith, Tyler Shelvin, Anthony Schwartz, Tristan Hodge, Nick Neiman, and Luke Farrell. So I agree. I think this does check a lot of boxes. Last time we took a running back instead of a defensive tackle. I think we've taken Anthony Schwartz in every draft that we've done. Somehow Alex has managed to do that in every single one. But
I didn't even do that last time. That was Tyler last time.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
I just felt bad for you. Put on those sex eyes, and it's like, it's
the sex eyes. We got to get that on a shirt somehow, man. All right, I kind of want to put some percentage points on this. Like, how likely do we think Christian Darrisaw is the pick at this point? Because last year this time, we all kind of just assumed that it was going to be Herbert, even though I wanted Jedrick Wills or Tristan Wirfs. But we were all pretty confident. I know Alex wasn't with us at the time, but Jason, Tyler, and I were all really confident that it was going to be Justin Herbert. So Tyler, I'll let you start this one off. Like, if you had to put a percentage on it being Darrisaw, where would you go?
I hate doing percentages for things. I think Telesco is pretty easy to figure out in the first round. Like, everyone kind of knew he was going corner when they took Verrett. Everyone kind of knew he was going tackle and took Fluker. Everyone kind of knew he was taking either Gordon or Gurley, whoever was there. Derwin James just happened to fall, but we knew it was going to be Justin Herbert unless, the Dolphins took Herbert. So I think that he is pretty easy to figure out in the first round. And, when longtime starters or, starters who play significant snaps, well, because they're starters, when they depart, he always does try to fill that departure with a new player or taken early, whether that be the first round or the second round. So, yeah, I think it is Darrisaw. He does check all the boxes. Slater is not really their left tackle, kind of prospect. He wasn't even there anyway. I don't think he'll be there anyway. I really don't think they're trading up for Sewell. I percentage points, like, I would bet money on it. I'll tell you that. As far as percentage goes, I would say 66.67%, with the only difference being, if Waddle or Horn are on the board, and then they have some serious, considerations. Maybe Jenkins. I think it comes down to Darrisaw, Horn, or Waddle if he's there. And I think 2/3 chance it's Darrisaw, I guess.
Alex, what about you, man?
I would say, well, first I'll start with chance to trade up for Sewell. I would say that's like 25 probably % chance. I wouldn't rank it as that low as a probability, but I do think it is possible. If they stay at 13, I would probably say, yeah, like Tyler said, about a 70% chance they take Darisaw, around there. It does depend on who was on the board, though, because if you get into a situation where Horn is available at 13 and the Eagles and Cowboys don't take him, if you get into a situation with, Surtain is there at 13, I think that's unlikelier. But, we could talk about Jalen Waddle or Devonta Smith too. Those guys could be there at 13. So I think it is the most likely pick just based on kind of what Tom Telesco likes in the tackles he's taken before. As well, I think Christian Darisaw fits that a little bit more than a Tevin Jenkins or somebody like that. If Rashawn Slater is on the board, I think that makes it interesting. But me and Steven were talking about this on the live stream. I kind of think Telesco might still go Darisaw there just based on what he likes in the physical attributes and, the functional strength and the verticality, all that. Even though he said today length doesn't matter, it's the motion of the ocean apparently. But I would say that this is kind of, so I'd say 70% chance if they're there, they take Darisaw. But, I'm sure it'll blow up in our faces and they take, Jalen Waddle. So I don't know. It really does depend on how the board plays out in front of them, because I do think there are some BPA guys where Tom Telesco would kind of throw out the tackle need a little bit in the first round. But yeah, in this scenario where you have Horn, Surtain, Waddle, and Smith gone, I do think it's very likely in that situation, if they stay at 13, that he would go Darisaw.
Well, Smith was on the board. Yeah, so I guess that maybe could be in play. But I think if Surtain or Horn are on the board and Slater's not, I think that's probably going to be a corner. I think they would view those two as higher graded prospects than Christian Darisaw. We'll see, man. Everything is such in the air right now because of the quarterback position and how that's going to play out. It wouldn't surprise me if one of those two corners are on the board. But I think if those two corners are gone, then I think it is most likely Christian Darisaw. So I'll say 60%. I'll say a little bit less than the two of you, but still kind of likely at this point. So I do think it's gonna be Christian Darisaw or one of those corners. So all right, this was our last mock draft. This was our last pre-draft episode. We are going to do our live Q&A on Wednesday this week before the draft. So if you're listening, please make sure and tune into that. We'll set up a Patreon post for you guys. That's how you can submit a question beforehand, which will get a little longer of an answer from the three of us, a little bit more discussion. We'll set up the super chat feature as well. And then on Thursday, we are going to do our live stream show. Like I said, we have the jersey giveaway. So I hope one of you guys really likes Christian Darisaw and is very happy with that jersey when it happens. Other than that, we have a signed Phillip Rivers hat that we will be giving away courtesy of Tyler. And then we're also going to do some gift cards, some t-shirts, and maybe another hat or two. So lots of fun stuff headed your way. Thank you so much for tuning in. Again, make sure and hit that subscribe button to our YouTube channel. Leave us a rating or review. And we do really appreciate the guys. And then we'll see you again on Wednesday.
Rappaport is going to drop a trade up to 7 bomb in like 20 minutes and make this episode irrelevant, right?
Probably.
Definitely.
That's how it works. All right, guys. Bye.